We used to think that health crisis concerns only the medical research fields, and how confident we were to think that we're the first to propose a study relating COVID-19 to criminology. But to our surprise, tons of researchers that recently flooded the internet tackled the effect of COVID-19 to crime rates. But a common gap led to the accomplishment of this study. None was yet published studying whether this pandemic had also affected the intensification of the implementation of crime preventive measures, which consequently lowers the crime rates. Presenting now our study entitled Comparison of Prevalent Crimes and Extent of Implementation of Crime Preventive Measures Before and During the Community Quarantine.
This paper revolves around what crime had been prevalent in the last 9 months before the new normal emerged and the first 9 months after its emergence. Further, it studied the extent of implementation of crime preventive measures before and during the community quarantine. In the comparison of crime prevalence before and during the community quarantine, the researcher was able to establish which crimes ceased to become prevalent in this new normal, which whose crime rate did not change at all, and which persisted to strike. Along with this, the reason of this crime rate change were determined. On the other hand, the comparison of the extent of implementation before and during the community quarantine revealed which period had the preventive measures become more visible to the resident and the effect this change had brought. With all this comparison and analysis, the researchers were able to find out a relationship between crime prevalence and extent of implementation.
Let's now proceed to the literature review. COVID-19 is not the first pandemic that affected the countries worldwide. Last 2013, cholera broke out in Yemen and criminologists took that opportunity to study crime rates during that period, comparing it with the time before the cholera outbreak. It was found that theft and robbery dropped because of people's fear to get infected, while because of the competition for the limited resources, the urge to drive people away caused the escalation of physical injuries. According to Richards, Jennings, and Perez, law enforcers play a key role during the time like this. It includes checkpoint, health protocol, enforcement, patrol, and quarantine restrictions. Internationally speaking, in the US, Ashby's study found out that strict implementation of stay-at-home orders led to the crime rate decrease specifically for serious and violent crimes, like murder, rape, and homicide. Stealing crimes, excluding non-residential burglary, and assault in public also lowered down. In the Philippines, Cabresa noted that prevalent crimes such as murder, physical injuries, homicide, and rape significantly decreased during the first few months of this community quarantine. Have you remembered the news where rape and incest in Benguet suddenly boomed? It had been postulated to be caused by the stay-at-home policies. This issue didn't just stir up additional measures, but the PNP and LGUs in attempt to subdue the increase, but also cultural peace pacts, because such is a taboo topic. But this finding is in contrary to the recorded crimes in the local of the study. Locally speaking, in Baguio City, crime rates already began dropping down before the pandemic, but dramatically decreased for almost 67 to 74% after the pronouncement of community quarantine. Okay.
For the methodology, to meet the objectives, the technique used by the researchers is a mixed approach of quantitative qualitative. To gather the necessary data for the first research question, the researchers requested a data from Police Station 10 concerning the prevalent crimes before and during the community quarantine. For the second research question, a survey questionnaire was administered to the respondents and an interview guide was also prepared for the follow-up interview after tallying of results. Unfortunately, the period allotted by the researchers in their data gathering were of an unforeseen bad timing due to the sudden pronouncement of GCQ. Due to these restrictions, a lot of limitations arose. However, with adjustments, the researchers continued through. First, preparing a letter addressed to BCPO Station 10 and Barangay Chairperson of Barangay Bakaking Central, asking permission to obtain the necessary data within their jurisdiction. To satisfy research question 1, the researchers sent their letter requesting the copy of a crime data to BCPO Station 10. The researchers were asked to wait for 3 days. after which the data requested were furnished through email. To satisfy research question 2, the researchers administered questionnaires to the respondents of Barangay Bakaking Central after complying with the minimum health protocols. Then a semi-structured interview followed. After tallying of survey results, a follow-up interview was conducted to elicit justification of the results according to the observation and experience of the residents in the local. To treat the collected data, documentary analysis was used to analyze the data given by BCPO Station 10. Thematic analysis was used to analyze the interview data. Triangulation method was applied to both SOPs. SOP1 used data furnished by PNP, interview data and theoretical literatures. SOP2 and used survey questionnaire results, interview data, and t-test results. The purpose of t-test is to compute the overall mean of the two variables to determine whether there had been a significant difference in the extent of the implementation. Okay.
Now, to move on with what we found, our first problem aimed to answer what the prevalent crimes before and during the community quarantine were. There were certain crimes which remained stagnant, decreased, and continued to persist despite the existing crime preventive measures implemented. Before the community quarantine, prevalent crimes recorded were estafa, theft, and robbery, which continued to strike during the community quarantine, while violation against RA 9165, violence against women and children, physical injuries, child abuse, murder, and malicious mischief ceased to become prevalent during the community quarantine, and acts of lasciviousness and trespassing remained stagnant. Generally, acquisitive crimes increased or remained to become prevalent during the community quarantine because of economic instability brought by the loss of jobs. To note that a situation where people can move without restrictions, allowing them to go and work for money, still facilitates stealing due to inadequate necessities, what more in this new normal where jobs become limited? A question raised as an answer when we ask them why such acquisitive crimes continue to persist. Extinctive crimes, on the other hand, had decreased because of stay-at-home orders, stricter checkpoints, and police patrol, which nourished family social bonds and limited people's movement. Heightened social attachment diminished the urge of people to commit illegal activities, while limited movements reduced interaction of would-be offenders to their would-be perpetrators. Thus, this crime ceased its prevalence.
As to the results of the statement of the problem number 2, which is the extent of implementation of crime preventive measures before the community quarantine, specifically from June 2019 to February 2020, and during the community quarantine, particularly from March 2020 to December 2020. Table 1 shows the overall mean of the extent of implementation of crime preventive measures before and during the community quarantine. Results show that before the community quarantine, the extent of implementation of crime preventive measures was 3.06, interpreted as sometimes. Meanwhile, during the community quarantine, the extent of implementation of crime preventive measures is 4, interpreted as often. This implies that, as compared to before the community quarantine period, the implementation of crime preventive measures during the quarantine has intensified. The table 2 shows the difference between the extent of implementation of crime preventive measures before and during the community quarantine. Results show that there is a significant difference between the degree of implementation before and during the community quarantine, which now rejects the null hypothesis, stating that no significant difference between before and during the community quarantine extent of implementation exists. The table 3 shows the degree of the significant difference between the extent of implementation of crime preventive measures before and during the community quarantine. Accordingly, there was 0.3408 correlation, which equates to a low significant correlation between the two variables. Okay.
In this study, it has been shown that prevalent crimes greatly contributing to the decrease of crime rates are those extinctive in nature, while crime categorized as acquisitive subsisted to strike. Stay-at-home orders improve bonds between families and reduce chances of aggression in the community through the lessened interaction. Thus, crime against persons gradually decreased. However, due to these stay-at-home orders and closure of establishment, loss of jobs became a problem, causing an escalation in stealing offenses to sustain their needs.
To summarize the findings of the extent of implementation of crime preventive measures, the crime preventive measures intensified during the community quarantine as compared to before its pronouncement. Thus, there was a difference as to the extent of the implementation between the two time frames. Moreover, there was a significantly low correlation between the two variables. Due to the intensification of implementation of crime preventive measures during the community quarantine, it resulted to lower crime rates. Additionally, when it comes to the residents' perspective, they now have high regards to the authorities. Okay.
With almost 5 months of commitment in studying this topic, the researchers were able to conclude that prevalence of crimes are not constant. It changes over time depending on the surrounding circumstances. It is the adjustment of the people to the changes happening in society that affects crime prevalence, either in a positive or negative light. But regardless of these reasons behind crime commissions, it can be countered by efficient implementation of crime preventive measures. It is inevitable that changes in the extent of implementation of crime preventive measures do majorly impact crime prevalence. That the more intensified the degree of implementation is, the lesser the rates of prevalent offenses to come. Concisely, there had been a significant difference in change between the rates of prevalent crimes before and during the community quarantine due to increased firmness in the implementations of measures designed to counter it. Okay.
Based on the findings generated in this study, we, the researchers, humbly present the following recommendations. First, LGUs may add and modify programs in collaboration with various agencies and NGOs, which aims to address the primary needs of the residents that has been compromised due to the health and crime prevention protocols issued by the government. Adding more qualifiers to the TUPAD program may help reduce will-be acquisitive crime offenders motivated by economic instability. Second, for law enforcers, implementation of existing crime preventive measures may be strengthened even further to continuously lessen crime rates in the area since it gives a positive feedback. The implementation should be done all throughout the area of responsibility and not selecting only a certain area. Further, lawmakers may formulate preventive measures anchoring the value of families since it gives great impact as to the lowering of crime rates. Third, to the future researchers, increase the sample size into a municipal or city level to capture definitive responses through which it will surely help future researchers that will conduct further regarding the sub regarding the same topic to arrive at a conclusion applicable at a wider scope and implication. Okay.
Now, before we end, we'd like to introduce to you the people or the researchers behind this study. We have Aquino Ian Christian, Canutab Nicole, De La Torre Carljan, Gali Jerome, Gangat Irish, Padamada Mark Louis, Sambat Anna May, and the last member of our team, we have Miss Charlene L. Agrito. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for lending your ears.